I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die historic on the Fury Road.
Welcome to the Mad Max Minute, where it's bikes to the left of us, rock riders to the right, and here we are, stuck in the middle with Mad Max Fury Road, 1 minute at a time. I'm Rick.
And I'm Julia.
And today we're talking about minute 55, which begins with hostile dirt bikes throwing firebombs, and it ends with Furiosa quickly dispatching 2 midair rock riders. Joining us this week are a few familiar faces from the Next Reel Film podcast and the Marvel Movie Minute. It's Andy Nelson and Pete Wright.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Welcome.
Thrilled to be back in Fury Road.
What a great place to be.
It's so great to have you in a series and franchise that we know, well, or at least we have a very good idea that there is a definitive end that you don't have to worry about being suckered into for the rest of your lives.
I know, we're going to be retiring with the Marvel Movie Minute still. It'll be in our will, passed on to our children. You must finish.
I feel like you booked us on this show just so you could make that joke. Is that possible?
It's entirely possible.
I don't want to self-incriminate. Here in the U.S., we do have the Fifth Amendment that I can claim.
Right.
I certainly don't want to find myself in the verbal equivalent of having dirt bikes flying over my head with firebombs dropping down on top of me, because that just seems like a terrible situation to be in. And it just so happens to be the exact situation that we find our heroes in here at the top of minute 55, because these professional dirt bike riders are showing off some of their fancy moves, soaring through the air, firebombing the heck out of the war rig.
Yeah, we come into this like mid-air with one of these bikes. It's great. It's like, what a way to start it off, you know? It's like already we're full of stunts, and we're 1 second into this thing. It's great.
It is just a stunning testament to this movie that just about any frame that you walk right into is such a beautiful tableau, right? That is the thing that I am so struck by watching this movie 1 minute at a time, one frame at a time, is that every frame is, not to steal a beautiful concept and title, but every frame is a painting here. It's just incredible architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's been striking me during the movie thus far is the consistent color palette and the division of that color palette. The top of the screen is blue, the bottom of the screen is this burnt orange, and it always stays that way. And it is very consistent. And I don't think it really changes until we get a nighttime scene.
Other than maybe like the giant haboob, the big sandstorm that they have.
Yeah.
Which is kind of just like the burnt red everywhere.
Yeah, right.
Right, they very much live in this palette, and I think even the dark stuff, the interior stuff, the open, it still lives in the dark blues. Like, we don't escape this palette. It's really soothing, which weirdly soothing for a movie that's so wildly violent.
Yeah.
Why does Fury Road such a calm meditation?
Well, it's that perfect balance of that orange and blue that is like such a nice balance of color. So they managed to make this entire film look that way. It's great.
And this color palette that we're working with just works so well with the modern cinema that we're working with digital projection and digital technology in general that can really highlight those oranges and blues that film and film projectors just didn't have the same ability to be so vibrant with. So it's a good example of George Miller as this old hat in the industry. Like, he started in 79. Things were incredibly different back then, and yet he's altered the way he does things in order to reflect this new cinema landscape that this movie was released in.
Right, because if he had filmed this movie in 79, technologically, he would not have been able to make it look this way. I mean, never mind like all the CGI, but just the colors would not have looked the same.
Well, not only was he starting in 79, but he was starting on a very independent sized budget. So, so also, if you throw that into the mix, I mean, there's no way he would have been able to make this, even if he had the tools. I think that he is a great example of a filmmaker who's not extremely prolific. I mean, he's got a solid number of films, but it's not like Spielberg level or any, massive quantity of films that he's done. And he's made just really consistent work throughout his career. I think that it's really been interesting to kind of see him grow as a filmmaker with as few films as he's done. And I think that's a huge testament to what we're seeing in this film is what he's been able to learn and accomplish with just those other few films under his belt. It's really quite a amount of growth when you watch what he does here.
Now, because we're talking about color, and I know that I've seen this topic come up online when I've been reading about the movie, obviously the first three in the series, they almost have a paleness to them. And then you switch from that track over to this movie where everything is very bright and very vibrant. I'm assuming that you both saw the earlier movies in the series, right?
Oh, yes.
I have a film familiarity, yes.
Yeah. What did you think as viewers going from that less saturated color palette to this incredibly saturated color palette?
I think it works well in context of the world that he's creating here. And it is very much a difference. I mean, the previous films were shot by a different DP, as I recall. And also they were before the whole idea of kind of that digital intermediate where you could really play with your colors in the post process. And I think that everything here, I don't know, for me, it works because everything still feels like it's part of this world that we've seen through all those other films, even though there was a kind of that difference in the looks. The way that the flames look here, the way that everything just has kind of that burnt look, it just feels like it's part of this world still. So that's what I find really interesting. And it's to your point, I think it works in George's favor that he's able to really kind of play with all of those colors and bring a lot more forward this time that he wasn't able to in the past films, but still keep it of this world in a way that feels like I buy that what I'm watching here is X number of years after those previous three films. It really works for me. And it's just interesting because it isn't necessarily the exact same look that he was patterning from those other ones.
Well, he's got a fantastic, DP here in John Seale, and I think he had already played Seale, had already been playing with some of this oversaturated experience in Sands of Time, the Prince of Persia underwhelming video game movie. But this feels like almost the next evolution of my experience with color timing in this movie. Like this movie, the color timing is as much a character as it is in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, right? Where it sets an experience for you that allows you to live in a world of dirt and fire, and that's where the movie has to be for the story. And so that's, I think, such an exceptional use of the technology to keep us in world, and such an incredible, again, evolution. And how quickly this property became the incredible home cinema test system. Like it was the Fifth Element for a long time, and now it's this with Dolby Vision and home Atmos, and this is the movie you test around because it's so enveloping.
We have a local comic book convention here in the state of New Hampshire, and it is called Granite State Comic Con, and there was an exhibitor at this past year's Granite Con, and she is the officially licensed dealer for vinyl adhesive stickers that you can put on the side of your vehicle. And the skeleton arm that's on the side of the war rig, she is the only one that is legally able to sell vinyl stickers of that skeleton arm design. And
Really?
I did not shell out for the arm. I was a little bit more conservative and just got the flaming circle design, mostly on Julia's suggestion. I don't think she wanted me driving around.
I'm a New Englander. I'm very conservative.
I was wondering about that image on the side. I'm like, is that there specifically because of Furiosa?
Oh, absolutely. It has to be.
So it's like, it's her rig.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's personally designed it.
Right.
Or at
Well, I
least
love
personally
that, yeah.
customized it.
Right. It's like they say, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into your work, and sometimes a proper result can cost an arm and a leg. And while they've never come public with exactly how Furiosa lost her arm, hey, if she lost it during a delivery, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Right, because I haven't read the comics, but I don't think I think that I would have heard if that answer had been revealed in the comics or somewhere. And I don't know. I like that they keep it That's something I think this series does really well, is they have a lot of these interesting elements all through it that establishes the world, but they don't ever feel like they have to explain away. You know, like, why are these rock riders, why do they control this canyon? Why is there's this bullet farmer? Why is there Gas Town? All these different things that are a part of this world are kind of left for us to kind of play with. And I know that they established some of it like in the comics and stuff like that, but I love that most of this stuff is just there and it really builds this world. And that's what I think is one of the most magical things, if that word is appropriate for this series, which maybe isn't, but still, you know what I mean? It really creates this world that is just so authentic and unforgettable and all enveloping.
And what I like most about it is that while it does raise those questions, it just feels right. You can ask, hey, what's the detail here? Why isn't there a Mad Max equivalent of Wikipedia where every character has a 3,000-page write-up and I know everyone's father's name, mother's name, childhood, favorite occupation sort of thing? You want to know, and though you want that, it doesn't ruin it because you don't have it.
Yeah.
Like, of course the rock riders would live in the canyon. They drive dirt bikes and, you know, of course they do this high jumping thing. What else are they going to do?
Right.
And that's even if you have the luxury of having the time to ask that question, because we're moving on at such an incredible clip. And I bring up the phrase clip because we get a shot right around 2 seconds into the minute where Furiosa is leaning out the side window and she's using her shotgun to shoot at the rock riders. And they have something that I've called a jump edit at about 3 seconds and 12 frames. And it's something we saw back when Max was escaping from the War Boys in the Citadel. And it is just a cut in the action on either a hit like it was in the Citadel or a gunshot here in this scene. And it looks like suddenly you're at a slightly different angle or things have shifted in such a way. And I love it when George does that because it adds extra weight to what has just happened. It adds extra weight to the gunshot, extra weight to the hit, and it adds another level of, say the word I want to use is visceralness, but I know that's the wrong word.
Visceralness.
Visceralness.
Yeah.
The last time that happened, back in the kerfuffle with the War Boys, I had a really hard time seeing what you were talking about, and it took me a long time. And I'm not ever sure that I really did see it. This, now that you've pointed it out, I can see it. Is more obvious to my eyes.
And he's pretty consistent with that, too, because you even get that just a couple seconds later when Max is firing out his window. It's like right about the 6-7 second range he's shooting. And they do the same thing there. Miller has another quick cut in there. And you can really tell mainly because the position of the women behind him shifts so dramatically when he's shooting. And then I noticed another one later when it's when he's loading the shotgun for Furiosa, which is much later, like 42, 43, 44 seconds in. But it's something that I think that Miller has adapted into his editing, because I don't think, did he do that in the previous three? I don't think so. I don't think that type of editing was even really that common at that point.
No, I don't think he did. And I think that stems from the fact that when he needed an editor for Fury Road, he got Margaret Sixel, because Margaret isn't one of these people that have edited a million Hollywood action films. Like, this is it. And so when she throws in little things like this, it just works so well. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized when a gunshot goes off near you, or when you're pushed into a wall, you instinctively blink. Your body closes your eyes for just the slightest moment to protect, the fleshy orbs that collect visual information for your brain. And I think these little jump edits is the movie forcing you to blink. Even if you keep your eyes open through the edit, you still get that blink effect. And I love it.
Oh, yeah, it works so nicely. And in a film like this that is so already full of that kinetic motion and just, things being thrust at you all the time, it does give you, it's, I don't want to say it's like a way to breathe almost, but it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can, there's, I can take that in, I can see that. I can kind of take that in. There's something happening here. And I just think it gives you that. And it just kind of, I don't know, it really bumps the pace. It does so many things for it that work in the favor of a film like this that is so kinetic from beginning to end. I mean, I know we've been driving already for quite a while. I guess that after the sandstorm, it's pretty much been, well, no, really, since it hasn't been that long, because she was just talking to the Rock Riders before every kind of all hell broke loose. But still, like once they took off and they hit the road again, I mean, we know from our experience, 55 minutes into this movie so far, we know once that rig starts going, it's going to just go and things are happening. And those little edits, I think, just really kind of remind us that this thing is moving. We are in furious motion with this film.
Absolutely. It's a very stressful situation, which I think is illustrated really well by us cutting into the back seat with Ang Herod. She pulls up her covering there to expose her pregnant belly, and she starts like holding on to it. And we know from back when they were hiding from the Rock Riders that something was up with her. She was feeling something. And now in this high stress situation, I'm guessing that situation has continued.
Yeah, I think George is reminding us that there is something going on with her, even if it's false contractions or legit early contractions. Something is going on, and it's not just going to go away. It's going to continue to play a part, and it's going to become more and more important as time goes on. And he's just taking a moment out of the action to remind us of that.
Mm-hmm. Something I'd never noticed, and I'd always thought that this shot has been very troubling to me because it just looks so weirdly fake, and it happens so fast, and the belly just looks like plastic, and I'm never quite in it. And then I watch it for this conversation, and it's actually moving.
Yes.
There is a baby in there moving around, and I'd never noticed that before, and it is an amazing commitment to the detail of this tiny shot that we actually get that reveal. That is incredible.
So maybe her problem isn't so much Braxton Hicks or legit contractions. Maybe it's just the baby moving in very uncomfortable ways.
Yeah, it's moving, or it's a turn, or it's, something is happening
kicking
there.
her, pressing on her internal organs, which is very uncomfortable.
Maybe she just has to pee.
I mean, these are women who have grown up in this world, and my understanding is these breeders, these 5 women here, like there haven't been any babies. These are the first potential mothers. And so it's not like I can't remember the name of the woman who has been kind of keeping them, like the gardener. I can't remember what her name is.
Oh, Miss Giddy.
Miss Giddy, yeah, the older one. I mean, maybe she kind of from olden times, whenever she might have some information to kind of help them through these sorts of things, but otherwise they don't really have anybody. So who knows what she's thinking right now dealing with this. The fact that she's, all of a sudden this baby inside of her is like moving around, and whether it's contractions or not, she's at this point where there are a lot of things going on with her body that are going to, really put her into question, like what is happening here. And so, yeah, I can imagine that it's a difficult time. And with the baby turning or moving, not to mention the fact that it could, come out looking like, what are the rictus or corpus? Mm-hmm. It could have some strange deformities. This is that period of time. So who knows what's going on inside of her right now? I don't want to think about it.
Well, and the next sort of sequence of shots takes us to dropping that cow catcher and, potentially throwing the rig into a massive deceleration, right?
Yeah.
And in order to kick up that dirt, that's not where you want to be thinking about, what's going on with your body.
And I like that you mentioned kicking up dirt, because that's the next sequence that I want to get into, where the front of the war rig is just engrossed in, or is just covered in flames. And so Furiosa reaches down below Max's seat, because he's in the driver's seat, and she raises this lever, and that lever drops the cowcatcher in the front of the war rig, and it starts kicking up dirt and just throwing it everywhere to douse those flames. And so I was watching this happen, and I got thinking, okay, so the cowcatcher is pretty prominent. We've been seeing it on the front of the war rig since we first well, saw the war rig. And I like to call it a cow catcher, but it also kind of looks like a plow blade that you see on the front of a truck during the wintertime. But I think it also really closely resembles a piece of locomotive equipment designed to deflect obstacles that would derail the train. Officially, they're called pilots, and they were invented by Charles Babbage in the 19th century. He invented the idea, but he never had his idea manufactured. And so when people started building them later on, people aren't really sure if they were using Babbage's design, but he was the first one to like publish the idea of it. They're also called cattle catchers and cow plows. So you can use whichever one you like the sound of better. But what stands out to me most is that this design of a plow or cow catcher on the front of a vehicle with those hydraulically controlled arms is something that you see attached to some of the vehicles in the Super Mario Brothers movie made in 1993, starring Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo.
It's a shared universe.
With how post-apocalyptic the Super Mario Brothers Mushroom Kingdom looks, it's entirely plausible that Mad Max and Super Mario Brothers, same place. All we need is dinosaurs in Mad Max and we can make it happen.
Well, that totally wins the podcast.
Nux is half of a Koopa Troopa, I'm sure. he's got it growing on his shoulder there.
Yeah, the lowering mechanism does look like a snowplow.
Yeah.
And I hate the stereotype, but I think it's not a stereotype if it's true that they don't really have plows in Australia, do they? I mean, they don't get enough snow anywhere to have snow plows.
Listeners.
I mean, of course, they have other kinds of plows that would probably have similar mechanisms, but snow plows.
Like, I'm thinking like grading equipment for one thing.
Yeah, right.
To push dirt out of the way.
Yeah.
But Australian listeners, is there any snow on the Australian continent? Like, do you have any particularly high peaks or any areas that reach far enough down?
They have some bunny slope type of little slush mountains. I don't know if I'd call them ski mountains, but
because I know there are penguins that will swim up to the coast of Australia. I can't think of any notable accumulation that I can think of. But then again, I'm on the other side of the world. It's not like I would be the reliable source for meteorological information for another continent.
You can go to Mount Kosciuszko, a family-friendly Selwyn snowfield.
Okay.
There's some snow. There's not much, but there is some snow. There's a very short section of Trip Savvy dedicated to winter in Australia. It's like yay big.
Very nice. For people that are wondering, dirt is actually an excellent way to douse flames because not only do vast quantities of dirt smother flames, dirt also has a very high melting point, and so it's able to absorb the heat from the fire. And as everyone knows, fire is pretty much a pyramid where you've got heat, air, and fuel on three sides of the pyramid. And if you take away one of the legs of that pyramid, the whole thing collapses. And dirt is able to take away two legs of that pyramid, so it's just doubly effective. If it was able to eat fuel, first of all, that would make dirt terrifying. But if it did that, it would make dirt like the ultimate fire extinguisher.
Oh, well, so that raised a question I have. Is the fact that they might run into people who are throwing these fire bombs at them the sole reason for having this on there, that it can lower like this? Because, I mean, as we pointed out, it's likely not for snow.
Mm-hmm.
They're not driving on train tracks. It's not like the old days where they're using it to bump stray cattle out of the way or things like that. What is the purpose for this, if not to put out flames thrown by fire bombs?
You don't think it's to knock cars out of the way? Or to use in some sort of...
Why the lowering? Why do they need to lower it then? Because they can just keep it in the same spot to get cars out of the way.
I think it's for debris in general, whether it be large things like cars that wouldn't require it to be lowered, as well as rocks.
Yeah, it's a multi-purpose tool.
Okay.
They do have this nice roadway, which in the comics is called the Fury Road, between the Citadel and Gastown. And that roadway had to be created somehow. And it was probably a combination of just continual travel with a vehicle like this that could push stuff out of the way to have this nice, clean road.
Yeah. On its own, It is very useful. We saw the cowcatcher on the front of the war rig obliterate the Nux car when they collided. But you can see the added benefit of, okay, there's a pile of debris in the middle of the road. If we lower the cowcatcher just above the driving path, we can more effectively clear stuff away. So I like the usability of it. I just wish that it was more clear that the lever was not a all the way down or all the way up thing. I think Furiosa pulled it all the way up and it went all the way down because they were in a desperate measure. But I would like to think that if you lift up the lever only part of the way, then it'll only go part of the way down. I'm willing to believe that that's the way it's structured, even though we don't see it on screen.
Right.
That it's customizable.
Exactly.
Well, it's a handy tool regardless of how you slice it.
Absolutely. And not only does it put out the flames, but it throws up so much dirt that it probably forces all the rock riders back. In fact, when the dirt dies down, the rock riders, we see that they were actually back on the hills. And so if they wanted to get closer during all the dirt being thrown around, they wouldn't have been able to because they wouldn't have been able to see. So it not only put out the fire, but it also kept the aggressors a little bit further back for a good amount of time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even as soon as they do it, there's two who are right next to them, and they veer off as soon as they see that dirt. So yeah, I mean, that's the last thing those rock riders want to get stuck in. I mean, it's almost like being stuck in the giant sandstorm. You don't want that, especially when you're on a motorbike.
Yeah. I know what I'm about to say may grow tiresome by the end of the movie, and perhaps it already has, but the visuals of the sand being thrown up and taking up the entire screen is one of my favorites of the movie, certainly of this week. It's beautiful. It's just a wall of sand, so it seems really simple, but it's not that simple. And it's very patterned and unique, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I love the way that it plays, just the way that it billows and moves. And as I watch it, I do wonder, I'm like, this is tricky stunt driving, because somebody's driving this with zero visibility, and you just have to really trust the people who you're, I'm assuming, on radio communication with, saying, okay, go straight, okay, you're fine, just stay steady at that speed, and just kind of, exactly knowing what they're doing and being very confident in their driving skills, so that they are driving at whatever speed they're going with zero visibility, and it ends up being completely safe.
Because they have to drive perfectly over this berm that has been obviously created on purpose, and they have to keep going straight. Do you think any of this is digitally modified? I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean, just in terms of like embellishing the dirt.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like anymore I have a hard time saying no to that question. I'm sure somebody touched some pixels on this set, but given his allegiance to practicality in making this film, I believe so much more in just the way the dirt is interacting with the elements of the front end of this truck, the way it plays against the skull as it causes that additional sort of fin of dirt plume to come out in front, and then the way the dirt is moving out of the truck a few shots later as they kind of emerge from it. I believe in that as a practical effect more than in any other film. I'm sure they touched something. Feels like that'd be a losing bet.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. And again, it's George Miller. Who knows what they decided to do with real practical effects. But I feel like the flames, like there's so many flames on the front, I feel like the flames might be digital, but the sand might be real. But again, like Pete said, it's possible there's a lot more digital stuff here that we're just not aware of.
But you know what else? Like, you're making this movie, to your point, Andy, that like you're part of the stunt team on Mad Max Fury Road, and you're going to let them say, hey, we've got this sequence and it's going to have a lot of dirt and it's going to look like this, but don't worry, you don't have to do that. No, you're going to get in behind the wheel of that truck and you're going to drive it headlong into that berm, because this looks like a lot of fun. Like, this is why you get into stunt work, to do stuff like this. How beautiful.
I can imagine that the phrase "don't worry, we'll edit it in post" is for some stuntmen great to hear. For other stuntmen, the worst possible thing to hear.
Right.
So with the fire extinguished and the Rock Riders coming in from all angles, Furiosa opens up the moonroof and she climbs up out of it. And Max loads a rifle for her, pulls the clip from the top of the rifle, closes the slide, then hands it up to her. And so this is a Type 56 SK Chinese version of the, Russian incoming, so bear with me. Samozari Adni Karabin Sistemi Simonova rifle. Apologies to the Simonova family, first and foremost, but this is a Soviet semi-automatic rifle designed in 1943 by Sergei Gavrilovich Simonov, and it is chambered for 7.62 by 39 millimeter rounds. I counted 6 rounds in the clip that Max pushes down into the rifle. So as Furiosa is taking out these guys, 6 is the magic number.
Okay.
So she stands up through the roof hatch, she takes the rifle, and 2 Rock Riders are coming on the side. She fires once, takes out that lead Rock Rider, and he does this nice little tumble off of his bike. Next up, we get a Rock Rider on the left, and Max takes him out with his handgun. And as the Rock Rider falls from his bike, Max starts reloading, and Furiosa fires 2 more times off to her side. So she's at 3 at this point. She's halfway done. We then get a nice little feature of Max reloading his gun and then reaching out and firing between Furiosa's legs. And before he starts firing again, we hear Furiosa's 4th shot. And then after the quick close-up of Max's hand squeezing off rounds, we see Furiosa aim and shoot at an incoming Rock Rider for number 5. And the final shot we get happens after that Rock Rider falls off his bike, and then another one jumps into view, and she shoots him right out of the air for the 6th and final shot of that clip.
So those are our 6.
That's my favorite shot of the minute. Yeah. That is such a fantastic, fantastic shot. And again, you made this comment earlier about the, how quick they're able to move through this particular sequence. 6 shots, all the Rock Riders falling in a handful of shots. I counted 35 cuts in this minute, if you're counting cuts, which is extraordinary, especially when you look at where they came from Road Warrior. And they jam a lot of action in between those cuts.
So in my notes that I provide for all of you, every cut is its own cell in a spreadsheet. So when I highlight the spreadsheet for this episode, I count 41 rows.
41.
Now
okay,
that doesn't include the jump cuts from the gunshots.
Okay.
So if anything, there are more than 41 in this minute.
Right, yeah.
It's not the most we've ever had in a minute, but it is up there in number.
It's just stunning. I was comparing it on Cinemetrics, and I just hadn't looked at this one compared to. It's been a long time, Andy. I can't remember if we talked about that, but it looks like we had about 15.3 shots per minute for the Road Warrior, and this one is 22 at 2,700 cuts over 2 hours, which is just an extraordinary amount of movement.
And I love Furiosa's extraordinary efficiency with these shots. She knows that she doesn't have that many, so she needs to make each one count. And for every bullet that she fires, one of the Rock Riders goes down, which is in stark contrast to how Max is doing it, where he's just firing sheer quantity over quality.
Right.
And Furiosa is so efficient with her rifle that the last Rock Rider she kills, sure, he falls off that bike, but because inertia is a quality of matter, that bike keeps going off in the same direction that it was originally going, and so she has to duck down into the rig in order to avoid being splattered in the face by a motorcycle.
Which is so good because it totally demonstrates why her character, like her position, is so much higher demand than Max, right? I mean, she is in her place for a reason, and this is where we get to see why. He's just, oh, look, I'm shooting a gun, and she is just on point.
And I do think it's a little funny that she kills a guy on the motorcycle, and then she has to not avoid the guy, but avoid the motorcycle. And that's where we've come to the end of minute 55. So here at the end of our episode, Andy and Pete, is there anywhere you would like our listeners to go in order to hear more of your material?
Yeah, they could check out thenextreel.com. Reel, REEL, just like the old film reels. And there they can find our main show, The Next Reel, where we talk about just a wide variety of movies. We've done the Mad Max series, so we've talked about all 4 of those films. And yeah, they can check out our shows there and find links to all of our social media places. And then Marvel Movie Minute is the place where they can check out the Marvel shows that we're looking at right now. We've just started, so we're looking at Iron Man 1 minute at a time. Although by the time this episode comes out, we're probably pretty close, I would say, to the end of Iron Man.
Yeah, we'll be we may be in the end credits. Who knows?
As for us, we will be coming back on Wednesday. The wives are going to have a little trouble getting the rifle reloaded. The Rock Rider Chief is going to show up to air his grievances. And the Fuel Pod, it's going rogue. The Mad Max Minute podcast is a fan project by Rick and Julia Ingham.
The Mad Max franchise was created by George Miller and Byron Kennedy, is presented by Kennedy Miller Mitchell Productions, and distributed by Warner Brothers.
Mad Max Minute is produced and edited by Rick Ingham. Our opening music is Verdi's Dies Irae by Daniel Bautista of danielbautista.com.
Our home on the internet is madmaxminute.com. You can follow us on Twitter at madmaxminute, like us on Facebook by searching for Mad Max Minute, and join our Facebook listener group, Mad Max Minute Beyond Microphone.
If you'd like to support the podcast, visit madmaxminute.com, where you can see what's in our TeePublic store, join our Patreon, or even donate to the show to help us keep the tanks full.
Thank you for joining us for Minute 55 of Fury Road. We'll see you next time.